Hello, my fellow humans that happen to do poll. Welcome to another poll chat, and welcome to the first poll chat of 2025. As you can tell, we're doing things a little bit different. We're doing the whole full video thing, and we're actually posting this to the YouTubes. We're trying to be more professional, whatever that may mean to you. But for this first video of 2025, I thought we would do a fun video and answer questions that I often get about being a pole instructor. So let's go ahead and just dive into this topic. So the first question I always get is, what made me want to be or to become a pole instructor or pole fitness instructor? So for me, I really wanted to become an instructor because I didn't see myself represented a lot online, which is primarily how I've done a lot of my pole fitness journey, or really a lot in my local spaces. And that's no shade to my local pole studios. I've seen a lot more diverse body types and instructors come up over the past few years, but again, this is just my experience. So what I mean, like, by instructors that look like me or think like me is another thing I should also add in there is in my local area and also online. I don't see a lot of instructors that are plus size. Like, we have Ross the Diva, who is somebody that I admire and look up to. But when I first started pole, there really wasn't a lot of plus size representation, and there wasn't also a lot of neurodivergent representation or instructors that taught or that knew how to work with students that have ADHD, or instructors that have ADHD that were also plus size, or some mix of the two. So for me, I really wanted to teach primarily because I didn't see a lot of that representation. And I thought, and I still think, that because of my experiences being like having ADHD and being plus size, I can help a lot of people that also struggle with both of those. Those are both very nuanced topics, and I can make videos going into kind of my experience in both. But the other reason why I wanted to get into teaching is that in my full-time job, I did a version of teaching for a living. I wasn't like a teacher in a school, but in my daytime job, I helped teach and onboard new people to my company. So I have a background in learning styles and how to present information to people. And it's something that really fills up my cup so much. I love teaching. I love helping people grow. It's something that genuinely fills up my cup and brings so much joy to my heart, which is something you need if you're wanting to be an instructor, especially like a pole fitness instructor. So those are kind of my reasons why I got into teaching. And for a little bit more background, because I don't think I said this in the intro because ADHD brain, what kind of qualifies me to even have this discussion is that I have been a pole instructor on and off for the past year. And I say on and off because I ended up leaving the studio that I was in person teaching at, but I've also done a lot of virtual teaching, and I've been a student of pole for it'll be 8 years this October. So that kind of what qualifies me to have this conversation. So moving on, another question that I get frequently is, what certifications do you have to be a pole instructor? And that is really going to vary because right now there isn't like an industry standard of like, hey, you have to have this certification, license, whatever. So, for example, I used to be a Zumba instructor. In order to teach Zumba, I had to be licensed in Zumba, and I had to essentially take a course, pay a fee in order to teach that format. Pole is a little different because it's not as, I don't want to say it's popular, but it's getting there, but it's not as big as like Zumba, Pilates, yoga, stuff like that. It's not as regulated, I guess that's the proper term there. So it's really going to depend on what studio you go to. When I was at my old studio, sorry, I'm trying to say this with the least amount of shade as possible. There was nobody that was really like, there was maybe one instructor that was actually like certified in pole, like they had gotten pole fitness certification. Another instructor was um, a personal trainer, and like myself, I have my my group fitness certification. I have another pole fitness certification, and then I have like my first aid and AED training, all of that. So it's really going to depend on the studio. Like, other than me and a few instructors, nobody else had like certifications or really like qualifications to teach, which that's not me being shitty. There are amazing instructors that I've worked with that they have just a general background in fitness, and they know how to take that background and apply it to pole, which is totally fine. It's going to depend on where you teach. And on that same vein, this is just my personal thoughts here. I don't think that you have to take certifications to be a great pole instructor. I think they are good because they teach you a lot of anatomy and a lot about body awareness to teach safely. That's my big thing. As long as you're teaching safely and you're not like, something I've seen before is an instructor that just taught tricks, and they knew how to do those tricks for themselves, but they didn't necessarily know how to teach them safely for students, and that caused injuries. So my biggest point is you don't have to have all these fancy certifications. I would say make sure you have your at least your first aid certification, so you know how to help in those situations. But just make sure whatever you're doing, you know how to teach safely. Do your research, do the bare minimum, do something to make sure that the person's body that you're in charge of, you don't screw up. Next question I often get is, do you have to have insurance to teach? This is also a question that's going to very much depend on where and how you're teaching. So for me, I have insurance because I'm not associated with the studio currently, and I want to be able to teach private lessons at other studios, and I want to be able to teach virtually and be covered. Now, the previous studio that I worked at, I did not have to have insurance because their insurance covered me as long as I was employed by them. And I know that's how a lot of studios operate. But for me, I have my own to cover my assets because I don't want to get sued. But yeah, that is definitely something to look into if you're wanting to go down the route of teaching. Make sure you're covered, whether it be virtually, in person, whatever, so you don't get your butt sued. Last question that I get kind of frequently, because I get people are curious, is, do you make a lot of money being an instructor? And as with all the other questions, that's going to very much depend on a lot of different factors. But for me, I can say that I have put more money into my being an instructor than I have being an instructor. So for example, I have taken various certifications because I don't have a background in fitness other than Zumba. And I personally have spent a lot of time, money, effort making sure that I am educated in teaching my students. And yes, it has cost me more than I've actually made from being an instructor. But for me, I am okay with that because I have a full-time job to cover that. And again, hopefully in the long run, it pays off. It's going to make me a better instructor. At least I hope. In my experience, it is very hard to make being a pole fitness instructor, really any type of fitness instructor, a full-time career, unless you, how do I phrase this? Unless you have like a built-in audience, you are a certain aesthetic, which I'm not going to say, or you just you have a ton of money that you've already been able to put in to make money. That's my personal experience. A lot of pole instructors, even those that own their own studio, I've met instructors that still have full-time jobs to be able to pay for their studio. This is definitely something that you have to put a lot of money into. Again, I guess you don't necessarily have to, but I guess that's my personal opinion from where I stand. Like I feel like unless you're somebody that has even if you're somebody that has a lot of background in fitness, it's super hard to make this a full-time career, especially like I've seen people that have quit their jobs to become full-time instructors, and they end up having to go back to work because this is a risky business. Like it is, fitness is one of those things where, and I'm not just speaking about pole here, just fitness careers in general can be very risky because think of the population that you're getting into. Sometimes, like with pole, for instance, because I know it's more niche, sometimes you could have like a group of students that say they're gonna, really buy into pole. They're gonna go the full long way. They're with you for a couple of months and then they drop. Pole's a hard thing to stay with. Same thing with like personal training. Some people are like, yes, New Year's resolutions, start off the year strong. They get really hard into personal training for the first couple months, then life happens and they drop it. I feel like that's just kind of a cycle with fitness in general. So I would say, to make this a long story short, don't get into this field thinking you're going to make tons and tons of money unless you're somebody that already has tons and tons and tons of money to put into advertising, into fancy places, to aesthetically pleasing things. I feel like for me personally, and I also feel like this is not me trying to play a victim or anything like that. With me, I feel like being a plus size human, I have a slight disadvantage because there's an annoying stigma that plus size people aren't healthy. Even when I've been smaller, I've heard the same thing. So it's just it, my point with all this is this is a hard industry to get into. And I do not recommend it being like a full-time career unless you like don't quit your daytime job. Just don't. I still have a full-time job on top of all the stuff that I do for this because it's something that I genuinely love. It's a passion. It's something I care about. So those are the most common questions that I've gotten as a whole fitness instructor. Please leave your questions down below. If you do have any additional questions, I would love to share them and give my point of view on it. But if you did like this style of video, make sure you would like, comment, and subscribe, and do all those other crazy things that other people are always telling you all to do. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.